Hello everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to the As Always podcast, episode 120. I'm one of your hosts, James, and I'm joined, as always, by Tyler.
As always, how's it going, my friend?
Great, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, doing very well. Very well. Good to be
Fantastic. Great. All right, and before we continue, it's time to introduce our guest, a fan favourite, someone that we love talking to, Colin Moriarty of Colin's Last Stand and Sacred Symbols. How's it going, Colin? Welcome back.
Good. Thank you for having me. Hope you guys are hanging in there, all things considered. We're all dying, but everything's fine otherwise.
Yeah.
Other than the incoming apocalypse, and if this doesn't get us the asteroid, this month will, so...
Of course,
It's all good. It's all good. Of course, we can't continue without thanking our Patreon producers for making this show happen. It wouldn't happen without them. That's King Richard III, Damian, Josh Devillier, Olbrick, DIDDLOTIC, Real Cinema and Hawkins, aka H Parts 12, and Seth, and Ballsack 47, of course, can't forget Ballsack. Thank you guys, and if you like what you're listening to here and you want to hear more, head over to patreon.com/. As always, for just $1 a month, you get exclusive access to the Clubhouse podcast. There's over 80 episodes. That's hundreds of hours of content you can go listen to right now in lockdown for just $1 a month, plus a week's early access to the Cinema Room podcast, the Spoilercast podcast. We talk about movies, video games, and TV shows, and we spoil the shit out of them. It's a beautiful thing. And, of course, if you want to go to the $5 tier, you get on the Patreon list at the start and end of every podcast. So I'll jump into that, of course. Again, our producers, King Richard III, Damian, Josh Devillier, Olbrick, DIDDLOTIC, Real Cinema and Hawkins, aka H Plus 12, Seth, Ballsack 47, Casey Wood, Pink Flame 313, Dummasillin, Adam Sundling, Alfie Rowsell, Jamie Brown, Jesper Olsen, Lumistrad, Mario 5380, Has Coronavirus, KEMOSABE Gamer, CREAMPIES, Olly Hodges, The Creed, Josh J. Anderson, Brendan OBQ Overlord, RAVJAI, Summer Dillon, Diogo, Zixon, Modorox Returns, Gwen Hughes, 2018, 1998, 20, please change your name. Connor DeRose bullying the alley. Max H. Gene is doing bits in the coal mines. Owen Brayne. Zeek Collins has maximum XP and let's go. Son of a bitch. Ogeaidogo. Heresy Bad Assassin. Noah Watts. Furious Coco. Sab 2557. Nick Miller. The ACMJS. Radok. Casper Coral. Smexy Dork. Lewis Assassin. Kyle. S-Jaws. Emil Catborg. Josh Amora. Walshy. Ginkgo Swag. Malhar is a chunky boy. Master Bass. Ashton. Hashtag Team Mace Windu. Conversations. Loves Toby's Green Pies. Joe the Sexy... Come on, guys. Joe the Sexy Boy Smith. Joe, a.k.a. Founder Scarab. Evan Brown. Gives Good Top. Luca. Alfie Robert. Brian Ford. That's How It Be Sometimes. Fishy. Ben Fryer. Team Anna Travis. Billy. The Team Dynamite Captain Robertson. And Baby Boy. Thanks, you sweet vintage lads, for helping power this podcast and keeping us going and having the worst names all the time. Because
Did everyone know we had a guest? Did everyone know? Oh, they're getting a guest on. We'll change out all of our names to be the worst shit they can think of.
Oh God, James. That's how it is. I expect nothing less from our guys. But let's get right into it. Colin, you just released a game.
Yes.
Which is super exciting. Do you want to tell our audience about that game and how this came to be? I wasn't aware that this was a goal of yours, I guess, to create a video game like this. So what was the process? How did this come about?
Yeah, well, it's called Twin Breaker. It's on PS4 and Vita. Cross-buy, $10, or your local equivalent. And... yeah, it just, I've been friends with Barry Johnson at Lily Mo Games for a long time. He was actually like one of my very first PSN followers back in 2008 when we started getting trophies in games. And we've just been kind of in touch briefly here and there. And then he started releasing games on PS4 and Vita in 2018, I guess. And so he just kind of hit me up and we just ended up collaborating and working together. And, yeah, I kind of wanted to get involved with him, and he kind of wanted to get involved with me, and I thought that I could bring the writing and maybe some design not chops, he's actually a great designer, that's not what I want to say, some design philosophies that his games were missing, and some marketing, because it's hard to get attention on any of these small downloadable games, and then he could design and create and program these games, and we would have a really good collaboration together. So it wasn't necessarily a goal that I always held inside, but I knew that once the opportunity presented itself, it was something that I really wanted to do.
And it's just launched. How do you feel now that it's kind of out there in the world? Because it's a different feeling, like marketing something, and then when it's finally out, and you have that feeling, you're confident, and you know it's good, but then to have that in the world, and it seemed like, from what I've seen, a really good response to it. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, we're happy to have it out there. It's cool to finally see what people think and get a lot of feedback. I think we've patched the game like 4 times to just deal with like really, I think 3 of the patches were before the game even came out, to just deal with really minor issues with the trophies and some other stuff. But we're learning as we go, and we're happy people enjoy this kind of weird mix-up that we've done with Brick Breaker with a story. And I've always had a real soft spot for that genre, so it's cool to explore that, and we are happy with the sales. We started getting some sales figures yesterday, and obviously we did we did do a physical release in which we were actually allotted more than twice as many as our copies as our original allotment due to popular demand. So we're really happy with what we have here, and it's just a building block. We want to continue to work together. We did an AMA on PlayStation's Reddit yesterday where we talked about how I'm actually acquiring a minority share in the studio, and that our collaboration is going to be permanent moving forward, and we have pretty ambitious plans. We're going to do a sequel to Twin Breaker next year, and we're going to do a sequel to his other game, Herbroxia, which comes out later this year, but then we're going to make a JRPG style game, and so we're all trying to climb into that mode and get to that space, and it's been really cool. It's interesting to be on the other side of it, to be honest.
Will your capacity involved in the studio be as a writer, or will there be other things you're involved with?
Yeah, we're trying to figure. Well, it'll primarily be in like the creative and writing verticals, and yeah, I think I was originally going to be creative director, but I feel like that sounds like I'm running the studio, and I'm not. I don't own a majority of the studio, and Barry's going to remain in charge, so it'll be something like chief creative officer or something like that, and I'll be writing the scripts and kind of massaging the narratives or whatever for the different games, which are becoming more important in order for these titles to stand out. What was cool about Twin Breaker was you don't necessarily have to enjoy the story. You can actually skip all of it if you want. The intro and all of the collectible documents and the interstitial dialogue, and like, you don't need any of that to enjoy the game. It's there if you want it, and so it's just another selling point for us. So yeah, we're going to try to combine our 2 skill sets in such a way that we can make this work.
Yeah, nice one. It's it was really interesting to play, because it's not the sort of game that James and I probably are playing a lot, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, speak for yourself.
Sorry, man. Sorry. I mean, you and I have been playing, especially you, have been playing more of these types of games than...
For sure, yeah.
Probably over the last 12 months more than anything. I think the first thing I realized was like, oh, these smaller games are actually really fun. Even just something like Celeste, when that came out, I just heard all these good things about it, played. I was like, holy shit, these smaller games can be pretty incredible. And to have something like Twin Breaker, have the Brick Breaker style game with a story is an interesting touch. And as well, I said this on our last episode of the podcast, that just before the game came out, because I'd just finished at that point. It was the most Colin thing I've ever seen. I felt like it was like going into your brain a little bit, because the themes behind it were very you, and things you've been interested in talking about for years. Was it a story you already had in mind, or did it come about while you were developing the game?
Actually, when we were developing when Barry approached me with this idea, because he originally had approached me with a brawler, and we had a demo for it that we were messing around with, and we decided to go in this direction instead, to make something a little smaller and more bite-sized. And so I had this idea of like how I can give context to a Brick Breaker, which was some space theme, which our game's based on a game called Arkanoid from the 80s, which I really love. And there are little interstitial story scenes, not very much, but in that game, and it takes place in space, and you're like a spaceship and shit. So I knew I wanted to have something like that, but basically the bricks in the game are pieces of lost spaceships, and I knew that I wanted to do that. And then I kind of locked in later on the political ramifications of how this all happened on Earth, and it does play out the way I wish the future would go in some way, not with World War III, which is what the game revolves around, but in terms of a peaceful and neutral United States that looks towards the stars instead of looking towards fighting others, and kind of the game's themes are supposed to be anti-war, and I don't know if that comes through or not, but that's something that I wanted to put out there, is like, look at these amazing investments we've put in the game into space travel and finding other habitable planets, because everyone's fighting and killing each other here, and look what we can do if we just work together. And then look at how skeptical this alien species is of us because of how we've been treating each other. And so it's not necessarily the story I've always wanted to tell, but it's the story that I think made the most sense. And with the collectible documents especially, I'm able to flesh out basically 300 years of history in 40 documents by just giving people a little bit of insight into the state of the world leading up to the events of the game. So yeah, I'm happy with the story. It's cool. Some people don't like it. Some people think it's a little heavy-handed or glib or whatever. That's fine. But what was most important was that the game is fun, and I think the game is really fun to play, whether or not you want any of the context around it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the game itself. For I mean, the story as well was one of the things that drew me to it. Is with brick breaker games and things like that, you don't normally get, you know, a huge story. And with things like platformers as well, like one of the things that was great about Celeste, like Tyler brought up, was that it had such a, I don't know, a compelling story. And I think Twin Breaker has this sort of, I don't know, sort of like an aura about it with the story that draws you in as well. Like the gameplay is really satisfying and fun to play. Like when I was streaming it, I did it for our Patreon exclusive stream in March. Played through the main story, and it was, you know, the gameplay is great. There was some moments where I was losing my mind over some of the levels because I couldn't do it. Maybe that's because I'm bad at games.
Getting the documents on 39 was a fucking nightmare for me personally. That was a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I'm yet to do everything, but yeah, I had some moments where I was struggling. But that's sort of, you know, part of the fun is having that challenge. If there was no challenge, you know, you wouldn't have that fun. But the story as well, I think it conveys the message well. I think it's fun. It's a very interesting story, and having both you and Chris as well there to sort of tell the narrative and be in it. There was something just very fun about it. I think that was there as well. It was very compelling, and it was fun to just play through on that stream. So I really enjoyed that. I'm yet to go and do all of the stuff, but from what I've played so far, I've absolutely loved it. So yeah, it's great.
That's great to hear. Yeah. We've gotten the feedback that a lot, you know, first of all, I didn't think anyone was going to complain that the game was hard. And that just comes from, that's our own ignorance. We've played the game so much in making it that we just lost sight of the fact that people don't know how to play it. Like the 4 paddles really blew a lot of people's minds, and
oh my god, that drove me insane.
And it is hard,
but like in a good way.
Yeah, like it's just funny. Like that's something we definitely need to check for the next time, is to have more people play the game, so we have more of an anticipation of what people are going to say about it, because very few people played it outside of us. And so it's interesting to hear how difficult it is for some people, and also that some people don't like that it's very RNG heavy in terms of getting items and getting the high scores and stuff, which we understand, although we don't really know that there's an elegant solution around that. And I kind of like that it's RNG heavy. It randomly gives you shit, and like gives you that, at least what we wanted is like give you that feeling of excitement and like completion or whatever. So like level 39, if you're having trouble with that stage, like all you need to do is get like a heavy ball probably, and or playing on New Game Plus will be probably even better, because the blocks are there's more blocks, and there's a better chance of getting a higher score and all of that. And of course, like trying to buffer your score with the 2x multiplier and using the shootable paddles to just get 10 or 20 points per shot by hitting the ball with it, and shooting the scarabs, which is really valuable and stuff. Like there's just ways around it. So we think that some people also, like, I'm going to do a let's play of it soon, maybe this week, and the game can be played like really elegantly. It's really fun when you and I'm not like one of the great players of it either. Like I've seen some people play it in such an elegant way, and that's another fun thing about it. In putting, you know, you hear this from developers all the time, but in putting the game out there, you learn that it's going to be played and enjoyed and experienced in ways you never really thought, which is cool.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I think the thing about it being hard is why it's good. I think James would agree with me. We
I
both love the fact that
I was going to say...
we love ripping our fucking hair out with games. It's a reason... I know you're not a big fan of it, but the reason we love Kingdom Hearts so much is because, especially if you're doing, like, the data battles, you're going to rip your fucking hair out. That's, like, the love of it when you do get it.
You're going to be sitting there for, like, 10 hours doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then when you get it, you get this massive sense of satisfaction. And obviously, Twin Breaker's not that hard, but you get, like... I think... Like, talking about, like, the drops and how it's RNG based, I think it works because the main, like, gameplay is the point of it. And so, if you had, like, a way that you would know, like, when you were getting all these upgrades or these bonuses or whatever, I don't think it will work as well because, like, you're relying on your skill and knowing exactly how the base gameplay works. And then if you get these bonuses, then great, like, that'll help you out. But I think how it works is probably for the best. I think that works well, and then it adds to that challenge as well. So, but personally, I mean, I love a challenge. So when I was on those hard levels, I was loving it because I was ripping my hair out over it, going insane. But at the same time, it was great because I absolutely love that sort of challenging games. It's something you don't get a lot in these big mainline AAA titles like that you're getting from, like, I don't know, Sony or something. But when you get these, you know, these smaller games or these more obscure games or something, you get this challenge, and it's something that you miss a lot, and I absolutely love it. So that was something I loved about Twin Breaker, I think.
Yeah, one of the solutions we were thinking about for the sequel that was from a fan of the game was, like, why not have, like, set power-ups that appeared on every stage, but the block would be randomized. And to your point, I'm like, I hate that solution. I actually think that... the RNG is a better way to do it and just keeps it more exciting and more interesting. And yeah, the reason that we locked the collectibles behind A ranks and not S ranks was because we knew that some people would get frustrated. And the other reason that we did that was because, with the trophies, like, to get the platinum trophy, you need to do a bunch of stuff, but you need to get all the stages A ranked, but only half of them S ranked. So I wanted to kind of keep things like that for the people that might get frustrated. But again, we didn't anticipate that so many people would find it so hard. Although I think that, to your point, I think a lot of people like the games being that hard. So,
I mean, I know I do. So
yeah, I think I found it easier to get the S ranks, the 20 S ranks, not on New Game Plus, because it was more about, like, doing it quickly. So you needed to break the blocks quickly and hope you got, like, a heavy ball or the fireball or something like that. That's what I found the quickest when getting all the collectibles and stuff. I was like, I'm not doing this on New Game Plus because you almost need to do it really fast. But then it's a lot of restarting because if you don't get a heavy ball quick, it's like, well, fuck this. And you can't lose a life, that I found as well, because you need those health bonuses. But yeah, no, it's a really fun game. You should be proud, and I'm excited for a sequel. And I think definitely keep all that story and stuff in. Keep the difficulty. If anything, I would love to see, like, a harder mode, an even harder mode, like something like some sort of challenging mode that's even harder than that. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because that's something that I want to do as well. The things that we're playing around with, or that I'm playing around with in terms of the narrative, is to maybe have... So the first game ends on a cliffhanger, and I don't think we're going to do another one after the sequel. Maybe we would, but is to have, like, some sort of alternate routes through the game. So something like Rondo of Blood, or something, the Castlevania game, where there's just, like, different stages depending on the not the choices you make, but kind of like the characters you find, or whatever the case might be. So just having, like, a few different arcs through the game, I think, would be really fun. And it's something that I think would be something we would want to do, and maybe make the game a little longer. And yeah, we'll continue to have the narrative built into the game so that people understand more of the intent behind it. And yeah, we're excited to get it out. But yeah, we have to worry about Habroxia 2 first, and then we'll get into Twin Breaker 2.
Fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited.
Another thing that's happened recently, Colin, is a 3-year anniversary of Colin's Last Stand. So I'd love to know, with Colin's Last Stand, obviously you've got all your podcasts you're doing, and now you're working on video games as well. Are there any other I mean, it's hard to have known 3 years ago that you'd end up here, especially when you first launched Colin Last Stand. You were focusing on those history videos and political videos. But do you now, after 3 years, do you have a sort of vision for where you'd like to see your company go?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been being asked this a lot because the game has been occupying time, but I'm pretty happy with where the company is. We're bigger than we've ever been, and I was saying on my Q&A today that's going to go live for my patrons tonight when we're you and I or you guys and me are recording this, that I anticipate that the company is going to start to shrink a little bit because maybe substantially because the reality is that a lot of people out there are economically hurting right now, and while $1 or $2, $5 a month, whatever is trivial to a lot of people, in times like this, it's not going to be trivial to a lot of people. So I think what's really important, and you guys probably feel the same way as entertainers and pundits, is trying to take this charge of entertaining and informing and distracting people pretty seriously. And I think one of the unfortunate blessings with Twin Breaker was releasing it when we did, because I think it just kind of came at the right time for a lot of people to just fill in this gap as they're social distancing and they feel isolated or alone or anxious or whatever the case might be. So with CLS, the plan is to just kind of keep on keeping on with the products that we have, make sure that we deliver them in high quality and make sure that we deliver them on time so that people can continue to rely on us. Because I do think that there is such a thing as too much. And I think that instinctually a lot of companies, a lot of entertainment companies and others just feel like more is better. And I don't necessarily agree because we're all competing with each other, obviously, for people's ears and their time. And so adding more of your own content to that and that competition is probably a losing strategy. So making the content that you put out there as of now and making it strong or stronger, the best it can be, I think is the best way forward. So as Colin's Last Stand enters its 4th year, we're going to continue down the path that we've charted, and we'll probably put a new podcast out this year from my brother that's been kind of delayed indefinitely because of the coronavirus. And here in the U.S., obviously, pretty much everyone's getting homeschooled now, and my brother has 2 kids, so he's distracted with that. But otherwise, we want to just keep on keeping on and make sure that we earn the support in any way we can, whether it's on Patreon or on free feeds, so that people continue to enjoy the content. And when we eventually come out of the other end of this, hopefully in one piece and hopefully with an economy that makes some semblance of sense, we can get back to normal and that content will still be there for people. What I've actually noticed, I don't know, you guys might have noticed something different. It might just be my shows, it might just be the nature of it, but traffic is slightly down on Sacred Symbols the past few weeks, which is surprising to me. I'm not worried about it, but I think it shows that maybe people are just worrying about other shit too. They listen to it at work. They're no longer working. Now they have to deal with their kids at home. Now they have a sick family member or they lost their job. So also trying to keep that in mind, that, the one thing I'm committed to is to just keep my employees paid. They have nothing to worry about, and continue to pay them well and just take care of everything that we need to take care of so that at least I can control what I can control, which is the livelihoods of the people that rely on me, not only for entertainment, but more importantly, in some ways, for money. So, that's the plan.
I think it might be partly our audience age demographic might be slightly younger than yours. I reckon our main age demographic is probably the ages 16 to 25. Is the majority of the people that listen to us. So for us, we're probably, our shows are a bit up, wouldn't you say?
I don't know about podcast. I don't know about podcast, audience, because I haven't really been looking at that.
Our last episode was good. It was our biggest this year so far.
Whatever. That's interesting. But based on just my channel, content and stuff, videos, whatever, live streams, it's definitely been up, by a significant amount, which is great. It's good to know that. It's like you said, our jobs that we do now as content creators, as entertainers, if you want to call us that, is more important than ever because people have nothing to do. It's good. I feel good in what I do. I'm not just doing what I do to make money or to, it feels a little bit better in the sense that almost we're important in a sense. What we do helps people in a time like this when people are just stuck at home with nothing to do, or maybe something, based on maybe a financial issue, and they've, trying to take their mind off that, or maybe something with a family member is happening and we can take the mind off that. It's good to know that, we're able to do that, and we mean more than just sort of base entertainment at this point, because, from my statistics, at least on YouTube, have gone up significantly since this whole thing happened, which is great from a business standpoint, but it's great from like an emotional standpoint as well, knowing that people are, tuning in, and we're, getting people through, this tough time as well, which is great. Podcasts have, I guess, like Tyler said, have been doing decently, but yeah, maybe that is an age thing between us with what's going on there. But I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I'm looking at the traffic right now. We're down 9% month over month. So yes, I don't know if it's a coincidental thing. It might also be a slow time for my particular audience. Like PlayStation isn't really fucking doing anything. So, but. Also, I think that like Patreon is up month over month like 7%, so that really matters a lot more to the bottom line. So yeah, it's just something I've noticed that
definitely.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed that people might be migrating from one platform to the other, but yeah, it's just something I noticed. Like we just got to put the best content we can out there. It'll be there when people are ready for it, and that's like the best we can do, unfortunately. Like I wish that there was more that I can do. I've given some money and whatever, done some things behind the scenes, but it is frustrating as an entertainer. But like you said, it is important to take people's minds off of things as well. And art and entertainment, I think, is essential right now. That's why it's so nice that we have not only Twin Breaker, but more importantly, we've had Doom Eternal, and Resident Evil 3 is coming soon, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. And these will be nice, meaty games for people to lose themselves in for a little while if they can quiet their minds long enough to do so.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you doing over in the US? Because the US is it's quite a scene at the moment, at least internationally speaking, from news outlets, and I know Twitter loves to go off about stuff, but the US, what are the numbers now with COVID? It's the number one country in the world right now with diagnoses. Is that a word? I don't know. Yeah. It's been interesting being in the States here, and we have this really interesting society where we don't really believe or trust or like our government at all. So it's hard to like kind of rally us, the whole rally around the flag thing that only has happened in the United States like a handful of times really. And otherwise, we remain inherently skeptical of what federal authority says to us, and I think that has really hurt our ability to react to this serious pandemic. And I must admit, I talked about this on one of my shows, that I never put it out there in the wild because I didn't want to be irresponsible. I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor, or a scientist, obviously, but I was one of the quietly skeptical people where I'm like, this is probably not that big of a deal, And I think that, first of all, I was obviously clearly wrong. But I also was responsible enough not to put that into the wild so that I didn't negatively influence anyone, which would have been horrible because a lot of people have put out a lot of disinformation and a lot of opinions or punditry that has not been helpful at all. But once you realize what's happening out there, you have to focus on your well-being and the well-being of your family and friends, obviously. And I moved to Virginia from California in January, and I was planning on staying with my mother and her husband for a couple of months while I got my stuff shipped out here, and then went to go house hunting, which I was hoping to do in March and April. And now that's all screwed up. So like plans have just materially changed. And on one hand, I'm really grateful that I got out of California when I did, because I'm near my family and I don't have to worry about that. Everyone's down here, and Long Island's not too far away where the rest of my family is. And on the other hand, it's frustrating because I wanted to start the next chapter of my life and finally buy a house and finally go crazy. And on the other side of this, we're going to have really low interest rates, and housing prices are probably going to go down, maybe even substantially, which is beneficial to me. But the unfortunate reality is that that's because we're going to be in some sort of recession or depression in the United States. And I would have rather have had a more normal situation where people weren't dying. I mean, I know Trump gave a speech today
where they were saying that like maybe best case scenario 100,000 to 250,000 deaths in the U.S.
Holy
that seems
shit.
That seems really extreme to me. We've lost a little over 3,000 right now, but I know that the exponential growth is substantial. I think it was something like 700 people died just yesterday. So, so I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, that comes from the CDC, and we do trust the CDC in the United States. They're one of the few organizations we do trust. So it's a scary scene and a really mysterious scene. And it's also really infuriating because it comes from, you know, a communist dictatorship that wasn't able to contain it and that lied about it for a really long time, and it spread outside of its borders, and it's negatively affecting everybody. I mean, how are you guys doing in your homelands?
Yeah, James, well, how's the UK going now? You guys are locked in for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I did, but yeah, it's very strange, you know, being in because obviously we're locked down now, so like schools are closed, everywhere's closed except for like, you know, essential places like grocery stores or pharmacies or, you know, medical places like hospitals, doctor surgeries, whatever. So it's really strange. I mean, working from home for me means that, you know, this isn't too big of an issue. Like there's, you know, it sucks that I can't go visit my parents or whatever. And you know, and family and stuff, my grandparents, and they're stuck, you know, self-isolating for an incredibly long period, longer than, you know, I've been. And, you know, you can't leave and do this and do that. And so, you know, that sucks. But obviously, you know, working from home means that it's a lot easier for me, but it's very strange. It's really weird. And going out, I think it was it yesterday or the day before? I don't remember. But, I went out to go and grab some things from the shops. We need some food or whatever. And the amount of people that aren't taking this seriously that you see that are in big groups of like, you know, 6 or 7 people, or I saw 2 people just like walking down the street, like kicking a football back and forth to each other. And, you know, just people all around, and it's like people aren't taking this seriously. And that means we're going to be in this lockdown period for even longer. Where things aren't going to get more lenient and aren't going to let up, because when it gets to the period, the point in time in a couple of weeks where they're going to have to revise this whole lockdown they've got in place, things could get stricter or it can continue the way it is. It's definitely not going to let up because people aren't taking this serious. People aren't distancing from each other. People aren't going out only for necessities. People are going out because they feel like it, because they don't believe what's happening, or because they're not listening. But it's really strange, and the world is absolutely crazy at this point. I mean, personally, for me, everything is fine. But obviously, for a lot of people that are in this situation, it's not fine. And it is very strange to observe and to see on the news or whatever, or social media. It's weird. It's a really weird one. Yeah,
I think Australia's in a very different place. Maybe it was certainly different to the US and the UK. We're not in lockdown. Schools are still open. It's very strange seeing everyone else this way. Like, we've definitely, social distancing is a thing, and we've got lots of extreme measures. Lots of businesses obviously have shut down. Pretty much 6 months of all gathering areas, restaurants and cinemas and bars, pubs, all that sort of stuff are all shut down. But, you know, we haven't gone to lockdown where non-essential places are shutting down. Like, there's still retailers open, and, you know, still most people going to work, but certainly the roads are a lot quieter and schools are a lot quieter, even though schools are still open. Our Prime Minister's pretty adamant about not having to close schools. But, I mean, our numbers are, at this point, you know, who knows where we go, but substantially different to the US and the UK. I think we have 4,500 cases. And I think there's, in total, 18 deaths, and the youngest was like 68 years old. And part of it, of course, is we've got a country the size of the United States, pretty much, but only 23 million people in it. So we're a pretty sparse, spaced country with I'd like to think, a very good healthcare system, and I've always had a big focus on that profession. And field, I should say. So, I don't know. I'm feeling, my hot take is, and things could change obviously between us recording this now and this podcast coming out in a few days, is my bold prediction for Australia is we never go into lockdown. We're about to have 2 weeks of school holidays for Easter, over Easter. And I think
God,
that's
yeah,
the only
good.
chance I'd imagine lockdown may be happening, because schools are closed and Prime Minister will then be like, all right, we'll lock down now that schools are closed anyway. But after that, I think the Prime Minister doesn't want to, cut off the workforce more than he has to. But they've announced a pretty big economic package for Australians and New Zealanders, thankfully, as well, who are out of work. I think it's something like $1,500 a fortnight. Like a pretty substantial, and Australian dollars, obviously, so not as much as some listeners may think if you're in the US or the UK, but still a substantial amount of money, and probably a lot of people more money than they were making anyway. But that's a 6-month plan that's backlogged from the 1st of March, I believe, to the 1st of September. Because obviously people are still, even if businesses aren't closing, people are still losing jobs. But the economic package isn't just for people who have lost their jobs. It's actually for business owners that have lost 30% of their revenue will get, for every worker they have in their business, $1,500 a fortnight to pay their workers as well. So it's a big package, but then what happens afterwards with all that money that's now been put into the economy, what does that do? Like there's a lot of stuff that's still yet to happen, and it's impossible. It changes every day. My work, I'm still going into work, and I'm kind of like, oh, for how long? We'll see.
I thought your work closed.
No, I'm still at work. So
Is it
my
open for
area,
everybody or just you?
my area's closed. My department's closed, but
Okay.
everywhere else is still open. So it's
really?
crazy. And people, like you said, James,
Like
people
your
aren't
whole
respecting.
place where you work
Yes,
is open.
yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not the same everywhere in the world, right?
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
obviously
No,
nobody
no.
knows where you work, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's different here. Like big.
Yeah,
big
no, it is
places
different here.
closed.
The business is closed in the US. I think it's most of it is
In the UK too.
But one of the things you said, James, is people aren't respecting social distancing and going in groups.
Yeah, a lot of
Certainly
people
the same in Australia. Couldn't think of a worse country to have a pandemic. Our whole mentality is anti-authoritarian. We're a bunch of convicts, and when the government or police tell us to do anything, we're kind of like, so that means do it, right? and we've got the easy breezy mentality. It's just should be right. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll work out. That's the Australian mentality. So whereas New Zealand across the Tasman has gone into complete lockdown, and we're like, nah, should be right. But
Yeah, but they've only had like a few thousand cases, right?
New Zealand has only had a few hundred cases.
A few hundred. So that.
But
that means, like,
New Zealand's way. There's two ways Australia going about it. We're trying to flatten the. I guess the idea is flatten the curve, but like, I'm not actually. I don't know what's the best solution here, but their idea is for it to just slowly get into the population and for people to build an immunity to it, and try to, if it's slowly in the population, the least amount of deaths possible, so that healthcare workers aren't being overwhelmed. New Zealand's idea is to eradicate it with closed borders. Well, our borders are closed to non-Australians, but they've New Zealand closed off lockdown, everything's shut. But my thing is, at some point you're gonna have to reopen your borders, and are you gonna wait 18 months if we're lucky for a vaccine? Because eventually it's gonna come into New Zealand again. So I don't know if their way is going to work. I don't know. Colin, what do you think? Where's your head at with all this? How do you think this is going to go?
I don't know. Here in the United States, it seems really apocalyptic right now. It's
it's a bit different. It's a bit different.
We really got slammed by this thing, and I don't know. I guess we're gonna have some sort of, for lack of a better term, we're gonna have some sort of post-mortem about what went wrong. I think a lot of it has to do with the U.S. is basically the center of global culture and business, and we have a shit ton of people coming in and out of here all the time. And I'm not saying that that's not the case in other countries. It just really is the case here. And that's why you're seeing it in L.A. and in Seattle and in New York City so acutely. I think it's because of just a lot of foreign travel, people from other places, not only Chinese people, obviously, that might have been infected, but people that did business in China, people that were infected overseas that came home, people that are just from overseas that got infected, then came here to visit, whatever the case might be. I mean, it's kind of a blameless thing because it's an invisible killer, but it's obliterated our market and obliterated our jobs. There were the worst jobless claims in the history of the United States since we started keeping statistics last week. And there are projections from the federal government that we can have between 25 and 35% unemployment, which is
Jesus.
depression level.
Yeah.
And it's completely catastrophic. So it's interesting to hear your guys' takes. It seems like Australia is kind of doing good and okay. UK maybe a little worse, somewhere in the middle, and then the US is doing pretty bad. The good news is that we're a pretty resilient people, which I think is nice. And we're also the breadbasket of a lot of the world. We have more food than we can even eat here. So we are going to be well fed. I'm not worried about the loss of, not being able to find what you want and all of that. Like, you can go to the store and find like paper goods and some soaps and stuff right now. But otherwise, like, you can go to the supermarket and buy pretty much any food you want: fresh meat, cheese, produce, milk and eggs and butter. So everything's going to be fine. I think it's just a matter of like, and especially in the social media era, it just kind of is unfortunate because you don't really know what's true and what isn't, and what kind of trends are going to go and what kind of trends are going to fall and what's going to end up happening. It just seems like it's getting scarier and scarier, but I understand that there's not much I can do about it, but to just kind of stay home and not become a contagion myself, not only for the people that are around me, but for other people as well. So it's been a lonely and stifling time. I mean, even for an introvert like me and a homebody like me, just not having the option to go anywhere or do anything is really tough. But I feel a lot worse for the third of Americans that have been completely and utterly decimated by this, that live paycheck to paycheck, that, we've had, I think, really unprecedented things have been happening in the United States that we didn't even think the federal government can do, and probably aren't legal, but I don't think anyone's going to challenge in a time like this, which is like things like suspending evictions and foreclosures in the United States. Like, you're not allowed to evict people from their buildings. You're not allowed to foreclose on their houses. So like pretty extraordinary federal powers happening. And then of course at the state and local levels, a lot of these things are happening as well. And I think the biggest thing is that we were just caught flat-footed. Like, we were just totally unprepared for this. We're prepared for like all of these ridiculous things, like all-out nuclear war. I think we would probably be okay if we would win that. And like, if we needed,
I don't think anyone wins that, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or if we needed to invade like 7 simultaneous countries or something, like, we can probably do that pretty well.
I sense like, a theme here of what you're good at.
Yeah, we're not ready for. We were not ready for a pandemic. We just weren't ready. And I don't know how many things need to happen in the United States for us to realize that we are like a crumbling empire that is just not ready for these domestic issues, whether it's the flooding that happened in Houston or the hurricanes that happened in the Gulf Coast and on the eastern seaboard, and how ineffective FEMA is and all this kind of shit. And it took this pandemic, this really disastrous, like, Stephen King, The Stand like thing to happen for us to realize, like, wow, how do we not have anything ready for this? How do we not know what to do? How do we not have, we have some of the greatest hospitals and scientists and medical minds in the entire world. And thank God we have them, but like, where was everyone? Like, what were they preparing and what were they doing? Why weren't people listening to the klaxons about our lack of preparedness? A lot of hindsight going on now these days, but, yeah, it's a strange time, guys. It's just, it's weird in the U.S. There's something really Book of Revelation like in the U.S. happening right now. It's very unusual, and I think the toll is going to be pretty high. And the only thing that frustrates me is that China is clearly lying about their numbers.
100%.
100%. And we're not. So it makes it seem like we're like really like fucking everything up. But I'm like, no, guys, like, they're lying, like, they're just totally lying about everything.
Do you think that's part of the reason why the rest of the world was so unprepared, because of where it came from, and China not wanting to let anything get out, any information,
like if it came from the
numbers. US. Yeah, like if it originated in the US, Not that people in the US eat bats or whatever, wherever it came from, but do you think if it came from somewhere like that, the rest of the world might be a little bit more prepared because China were trying to cover this up, almost in a sense? Is that a what are your thoughts, both of you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. First of all, it's about cultural relativism in a lot of ways. Like, I have no problem with a society eating pangolins or bats or whatever, if that's what you want to do. I mean, that's fine. It's more about the condition of the wet markets, that like there's just all of this intermingling of blood and getting into people's wounds. And I was saying, because I was reading recently, just happenstance before this even happened, I was reading about AIDS and about patient zero and like when they think it jumped to humans. And apparently it happened in pretty similar conditions in Africa, where there were these wet markets with bushmeat being prepared, and it was all this intermingling. And before you knew it, like I think in the 1920s or 1930s, AIDS had started to kind of enter silently and quietly into the society through the conditions of these wet markets there. But it's not 1925 anymore. And so I have no problem if like people need to make ends meet and they eat these, what we would look at as exotic or weird animals in their culture. I mean, that's fine. It's just a matter of doing it safely. And we probably, I mean, a lot of us were like looking with horror, but also kind of laughing at a lot of the videos coming out of China in December and January. If you guys remember, like people being welded into their apartments and the military, like walking through Wuhan, which is a city that's bigger than New York City. And no one's on the street and shit. And we were all just like, what the fuck? But we didn't really realize that was like their totalitarian way of like being like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, this is a serious thing. I don't believe in the conspiracy theories that like it was made in a lab and it got loose or whatever, but it definitely does come from they have to take responsibility as a society for this. And I tweeted out yesterday that like, I think that there should be reparations and restitution paid to all of the world's countries, whether it's in debt forgiveness or whatever, because this did originate with them and they didn't stop it. And this kind of stuff could happen anywhere. I know that, like Lyme's disease happened, not that it's like a contagion like this, but that began in Connecticut, and which is a northeastern state here in the United States. And I would assume that if something like this happened here, we would be a little more forthcoming with everyone about what's happening and why it's happening. And it's unfortunate because from a domestic point of view too, when we tried to shut down the borders and shut down travel from China, which we eventually did, Trump, to his credit, was called racist and bigoted and all this kind of stuff, but it ended up probably being the right call. So it's a really complicated issue, and it seems like a lot of different societies are dealing with it differently. But because of the large nature of our country, we have a big landmass. We have basically 50 republics in the landmass that are kind of semi-self-regulating, and we don't really know how to deal with something like this. It's not something we're prepared for, and I hate to say it, it kind of gives, if someone wanted to invade the U.S. or take us down, I mean, this is kind of, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but this is kind of like a harbinger of like what can be done to us and how little we can handle it, because we're not a totalitarian nation. We don't have the instincts for social contract and stuff like that. We don't grow up like that here. And so that's good in a lot of ways, but it's bad in ways like this. And I hope that we'll make it through this, obviously. And once we do, we have to just be more prepared. But, they're talking about, they've already passed a $2 trillion stimulus bill, and they're talking about $4 trillion more. I mean, we're going to be running a debt somewhere in the line of $25 trillion, which is like 6.5 times what the United States spends as a government every year. So we're in bad shape. And it just, I know it seems dramatic, but it just feels like it's the end in some way. And I don't mean like the end in life. I mean the end in like
of a chapter,
the status quo, or like our country, as we know it. It doesn't seem sustainable. It seems all fucked up right now. Yeah.
Do you think that this could be, I guess, in some ways, because we will get through this as a planet, but do you, in some ways, you could look at this as an opportunity after the fact to look at it and be like, this is a real thing that we have to prepare for, because like you suggested, it's possible that this could be weaponized, this sort of idea, some sort of contagion. Now, could it be that sort of opportunity, especially because I guess, I mean, in some ways, we're lucky it isn't more deadly than it is. It could have been worse than this. It could have been something worse than this.
Yeah, definitely. We in the United States, we can't use our 500 million guns to deal with this problem. You know, it's like no one's ever going to attempt an invasion of the mainland of the United States because we'll all fight. We all with these crazy guns and shit like that. And I'm in a house that's fucking armed to the teeth, you know, like it's not an unusual thing, but it does make you wonder, like, how do we prepare for this in the future? I think the federal government in the United States does have some role to play in this, obviously. And it makes sense to me to say, like, why don't we all have, like, maybe we can just write them off on our taxes or whatever if the government doesn't want to get directly involved. But, like, maybe we should all have, like, gas masks and N95 masks and things of this nature. That way, if it is weaponized in the future, something like this, then we can prepare for it. Or if this reemerges like the 1918 flu did in the fall, which is a theory that's being heavily propagated by the CDC here in the United States, that it's going to come back and might even be worse. That, like, we can, like, go about our lives looking like Psycho Mantis, I guess, but at least being able to, like, go out and live lives and not necessarily have our economy so disrupted. Because what this really shows is, like, how tenuous our economy is, like, and that there's no moral hazard involved in this. I was talking about this on my Q&A, that the 1929 crash and what happened in 2008 those were embedded with moral hazards, meaning that, like, something was wrong with the system. In 1929, it was a lot of speculation and all this kind of stuff. And in 2008, it was mortgage-backed securities and all of these pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes that were fucking with the market. But nothing like that happened here. Our job market was really strong. The dollar was really strong. We were producing and exporting things. Gas prices were going down. People's standard of living was going up. And then suddenly the government just shut the economy down because it felt like it had to. And it happened overnight. And before you knew it, the stock market lost a third of its value. Like I said, we might have a third unemployment rate, which is, like, unthinkable. I mean, that's unthinkable. I don't even know how that happens. So I just don't know the answer. It's just I just hope that we come together as a nation and as an international community and realize, like, what has happened here. And that since we are an inherently global society that's all up in each other's business all the time, literally and figuratively, that we figure out ways to deal with this so that we can't survive another thing like this. Like, you know, that's when you get social unrest. That's when you get violence. And unfortunately in the United States, we have a propensity for serious civil violence here. And that's, I think, the thing that we have to be prepared for. If people have long-term unemployment, if the value of the dollar drops, if we have inflationary cycles, it's going to be bad news and scary. So.
Yeah, true. It as well, you guys have, I mean, you have a federal election at the end of the year as well. Like, how's that we had a state election in Queensland this past weekend, and I was sitting there like, how in the world? And we have compulsory voting in Australia, so I'm like, how in the world are we doing this? And the government's just like, no, the voting's fine, it's all good. And they did do early voting for the week before, and they were open from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day, and I went and early voted. But we had the biggest non-turnout in state history for voting. And I'm just thinking, when I think of the US, you've got a federal election with, a much, much, much bigger population than us. One, how do you think that's going to go? But also, how do you think this will affect, politically speaking, I guess, that election? How do you think someone like Trump's going to turn out at the end? And then Biden as well on the other end. It's a fucking shitstorm from at least my distant, maybe uneducated perspective over here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're not even through the primaries yet. So that's another big issue. And actually in Ohio, something pretty controversial happened where they canceled their primary and moved it to June. And the governor did this over the courts. The courts told him that he had to go forward, and he just canceled it anyway. And that kind of shit actually makes me scared, because we can't start fucking with the elections. They might have been able to. He might have made a really good decision, but it was against the courts, which are supposed to be the arbiters of all these things. And it just kind of instilled in me, like, I've always bragged when people have talked shit about the United States about how even in the most trying times we've had elections. We had elections in 1864 during the Civil War. We had elections in 1832, right after the Depression. We had an election in 1932 and 1944 when we were fighting the Nazis and the Japanese. And so the election's obviously going to go forward. It's just a matter of, like, do we do it in person? Why can't we vote online or by mail? And as far as Trump is concerned, I would never count him out, and I thought that he was actually a favorite until about a month ago to win, especially against Biden or Sanders. I think he would have wiped Sanders out too. But I can't imagine he survives this. I don't know that it's necessarily all his fault, but everything he was leaning on was economic, and now the economy is fucked. So he has really nothing to point towards, and I think a lot of people are going to be eager to just go back to normalcy, which is Joe Biden's whole shtick. And I would be comfortable voting for Joe Biden, I think. It's just, I just want to see how it all shakes out and who his running mate will be, Biden's, and then who the third party candidates are or whatever. So yeah, the election's in November, but we don't even have nominees technically yet, because the primary hasn't even finished. And it's clearly going to be Biden and Trump, but I don't know. It's just, I get a little nervous just about our propensity to succumb to structures of power during times like this. I'm not saying people should go out and vote and get sick, but I don't know what the right answer is, but it does make me it is a little nerve wracking. And if I were Trump, I would pretty much understand that things would have to go really dramatically well for me, or this is going to be the end, because whether he deserves blame for it or not, and I think he deserves a little bit of blame. I don't think he deserves all of the blame. The reality is that his whole thing was the market. His whole thing was the strength of Wall Street, the jobs, and the cost of living and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just all fucked now. So I don't know. I don't even know what he would run on at this point. Like, I'm actually kind of curious to see. It's like, how do you, if we do go into a depression.
He's gonna run on offense he'll run on nothing but discrediting Biden. Like,
I can't see Biden winning, to be honest with you. Like, if that's who he's going up against, right? Like, based on just sort of like just the social media, like, perception of Joe Biden, the way that he's just like this incapable, like, useless, like, frail old man. I feel like Trump is going to take that and run with it, like, just absolutely rip him to shreds. And, like, the people that already support him are going to absolutely love that. They're going to eat that up. And people that are on the fence,
wouldn't you say all these elections over the past few years, starting from the 2016 election, tells us that social media perception probably isn't accurate?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, but then that pushes it even further. So, like, because people like Democrats, for instance, on social media, that are all for, like, Bernie Sanders, they're like, I've seen a lot of them. They're like just totally not for Joe Biden, right? Like,
but you think they're not? You think they're going to vote for Trump over Joe Biden? They're going to vote for Joe fucking Biden.
Of course. But the people I'm talking about, the people that are on the fence, those people that are like, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders, but I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. I don't know.
Well, I disagree with you. I cannot
see Joe Biden winning. I genuinely can't.
Because you've got Trump at one extreme and Bernie Sanders at the other extreme. I feel like those people on the fence would be much more comfortable voting for Joe Biden.
But, like, you
more of a centrist, like, Democrat than
people. Like, if you talk about, like, say, imagine my parents, right, were American citizens, which obviously they're not, but imagine they were. I imagine if they would have watched, like, a speech from Donald Trump and then a speech from Joe Biden, I imagine that my parents would vote for Donald Trump, probably. That's just my guess. Like, I can't speak for them, but I imagine that imagine that's like a large portion of.
But then you're imagining an inherent bias that doesn't exist that does.
What do you mean? Like, what?
Towards personalities, towards people.
I just think Donald Trump is. I mean, I'm sitting here defending Donald Trump, but I mean, like, I think in terms of, like, who do you want to lead your country, I feel like Donald Trump is just that bit more competent that dumb people might follow more than Joe Biden. I think it's a very strange election And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because it definitely could go either way. It could go anywhere. But my thoughts is Trump's sort of got it at this point. But who knows?
Colin,
and also, I personally don't care. So it'll be interesting to follow from afar and to watch.
Colin, how did this happen with maybe internationally? Maybe it's a social media buzz. Everyone here that I know, talking to again probably age as well, was like, oh, it'll be Bernie, and it just sounded like it was going to be Bernie, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, it's Biden. Like, how did that happen? I thought Bernie had it.
Yeah, I mean, I said it was Bernie would never had a prayer of winning, and it's just because the coastal Democrats and the socialists that have a lot of power and prestige on social media and stuff made it seem like he was a candidate that had a chance, but he didn't. I mean, if you look at the states that he won and then the states that he lost in the primary and will continue to lose in the primary, Ohio got delayed, as we said, but he's going to lose Ohio. It's just, we don't want him, in the United States. Like, there are a few people that do, but it's not a majority of Democrats, and it's certainly not a majority of
most
Americans.
Of social media, right?
Yeah, exactly. The polls, there's a really famous Gallup poll that I think they do every year where they ask if you would vote for a presidential candidate that's like X, Y, Z. And it's like, would you vote for a Muslim? Would you vote for a Jewish person? Would you vote for a gay person? Like, the United States is more likely to vote, like, I think twice as likely to vote for a Muslim president as they are for a socialist president. Which, right or wrong, I mean, I would vote for a Muslim president. That means nothing to me. But we all know that the United States has some xenophobia and bigotry built into it, and that's a pretty telling thing about how much people hate that, in a lot of places, hate socialism, just the word and the idea of it. So even if you have socialist tendencies, like when FDR was like the only really socialist president we ever had, but he refused to call himself that and actually distanced himself from that term, understanding the reality of the ground in America. And the unfortunate thing about our xenophobia and our strident nationalism in the United States is, to the point you guys were making about if Trump could win or not. Like, I think Trump's going to run, if I were a betting man, I think Trump's going to run a scorched earth, pretty openly racist campaign. And I think a lot of that's going to be against Chinese, China and the Chinese, and him saying that, like, I was right about these guys. These guys are untrustworthy. Look what they did to our society, blah, 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 blah. And that might work. I don't know. But
I think there's a high chance,
I think that's his,
to be honest.
I'm sorry?
I think something like that has a high chance of working, especially in the way that the world is now. Like, I don't know. I just feel like Trump has something about him that people just tend to follow. Like, I mean, how did he win in 2016? A lot of people, if you asked anyone in 2016, like, who's going to win? I think most people that I would have asked anyway would have been like, well, it's obviously not going to be Donald Trump. Like, that's a joke. But then he won. And I don't know.
He's more likely to win again than he was to win the first time.
Yeah, that's, to me, like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it probably will be Trump, actually, this time around. Whereas last time, if you asked anyone, they're probably like, oh, no way. Like, it's just Donald Trump. How would he win?
The only difference is now there's a global pandemic that's just happened that's unprecedented, right? Like, I would have said to you a month ago, there is zero chance in my mind that Trump's going to lose to Bernie or Biden. But now I have no idea.
I still don't think
I'm also not American, but I also thought Bernie was going to be the candidate. But then what do I know? I listen too much to social media, and also, like, who are the people? Well, would you say, Colin, it's more of a West Coast thing to be more of a Bernie fan? Like, I went to the US for the first time last year, and there was a massive... I couldn't believe the difference in people between California in LA to New York City. Like, I was in California, and within a few hours of landing, it was at Santa Monica, and I was at the pier, and I probably landed 3 hours before, and I was watching people do dog yoga. And I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? What am I watching?
Yeah, I know. I lived there, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly that, like, grass place, that grassy area on the beach. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's California, Oregon, and Washington. And then there are some other, like, bastions of it. But New York's a different. I mean, I'm from New York, and it's a different beast there. I think a little bit more moderate, but we have these weird intermingling candidacies and ideologies in the United States, and they all just vie with each other. And I just knew Sanders didn't have a chance. It was very similar to like the Andrew Yang thing, where I was like, Andrew Yang has no chance, none. You know, at least Bernie Sanders had like some sort of like hope to maybe have an inside straight or whatever and get out of the primary, but it just was obvious. Like, we always tend towards moderates usually, and when we don't, it usually blows up in people's faces. And I think the Democrats made a very wise decision not choosing Sanders, because I think Sanders would have lost, definitely. Just based on the states that you need to win. Sanders would have won California and New York, but he's not going to win Pennsylvania or Florida or Ohio or Michigan. I mean, you need those states. So Biden is much more palatable. I would be wary of comparing Clinton with Biden, because people actually like Biden. And Biden has a connection with a very popular president in Obama. And he's just like, we call him Uncle Joe. Like, he's just, even though he seems to be in mental decline, some people think, and I don't know if that's really fair. I don't know. I'm not a neurologist or anything, but it's just worth noting that he's much more likable. Like, he has a much more inherent likability amongst the populace than Clinton ever did. Everyone hates Hillary Clinton, you know. So
oh god, yeah.
Oh god, I can't believe that was even a thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's 2016, real weird election.
yeah, I can't either. So yeah, I hear you.
So weird. But talking about Bernie Sanders and him running and everything and socialism, we had a similar thing in the UK with our previous election with 2 times actually. Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour, the head of Labour, which is basically our sort of Democrats in the UK. He was a very socialist guy, and on social media, I mean, if you only looked at Twitter, you think he was going to win. You think he was pretty close to winning, and even if he lost it'd be like a very a close loss. But when you look at the actual results, the Conservatives in the UK won by a landslide last election, even more so than back in whatever year it was before that we had the election. I can't even remember when it was. But Jeremy Corbyn had a great chance of winning, the previous time. And the most recent election, he wasn't even close. Like, they got absolutely destroyed. And that goes to show what Twitter, the bearing that Twitter has when it comes to the rest of the UK, is that, the rest of the UK just don't care. And I don't know, that's obviously very similar with the US, because if you look on Twitter, you think, oh my God, Bernie Sanders is going to absolutely win by a landslide, because everyone hates Donald Trump and everyone loves socialism and Bernie Sanders. But when you look at it, in terms of the greater United States, it's clearly just not the case. And it's just very interesting, because a lot of what we see these days in terms of politics is all through social media. Whereas in reality, it's not even close to what the general public tends to think, I think.
Yeah, it's through a different lens. Like, I know I saw a story where people were comparing tweets from Labour candidates to Tory candidates, and the Labour like on the election day or like leading up to like go vote and vote for whatever, and the Labour candidates had like I think like 30 times more engagement in likes and retweets than the Tory candidates, and that's just all you need to know. I mean, it's the same thing that happened with Brexit, and then like you said, the 2017 election, and I don't know that. I mean, I don't presume to know British politics like you do, but I presume that the divide between Labour and Tory is not as extreme as it seems in that last election. I think people were just so tired of Brexit that they were like, "We'll just vote for whoever gets this done, so we can move on with our fucking lives." And I don't really blame them for that. But I think even the Corbyn tweet, someone compared it, the Jeremy Corbyn like "Go vote for me" tweet, and then the Boris Johnson one, which was like something like 50-1. And he got fucking killed. Now, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is like one of the most unlikable people I've ever seen. So,
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that's not a huge surprise to me. I find Bernie Sanders much more likable than Jeremy Corbyn. But yeah, it's just we are not looking at things properly, and everyone makes excuses, and also attracts these weird cults of personality, which I think turn a lot of people off. It's why I'm not really into Trump, and it's why like I find Andrew Yang obnoxious, and I find Bernie Sanders obnoxious, and it's like they just have these cults of personality around them that like where people's entire lives revolve around
Yeah, like an
these
obsession.
fucking
Yeah.
candidates. It's weird. It's like it's just weird. That's not what politics are supposed to be. We're not talking about Abraham Lincoln or something like that. Like
Yeah.
and like
It's
really
not like
serious.
a fucking savior of the country. Like one specific leader is gonna, change the direction and save everybody, sort of thing.
Right. There are really 3 presidents in Washington, Lincoln, and FDR where they were serious heroes, like unanimous beloved names, because of the situations that they guided us through. But we're not in those situations, and these are not those men. Bernie Sanders is not Abraham Lincoln. Andrew Yang is not FDR.
Yeah.
So it's just like I find that, and I've expressed that in the past. Like the more I just see fans of a lot of these politicians, the more I hate the politicians. It's just like and that's why I find Biden attractive, and that's why I found like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar really interesting candidates, is because like they didn't really, people liked them and voted for them, but they didn't have these like crazy fucking social media mobs, and I was like, well, that's that in itself is very attractive to me. So
That's quite true. I mean, I don't remember what it was like with Obama. I mean, when he first got elected, I suppose Twitter wasn't a huge thing. But what was it like? I mean, I don't even remember. But, like, did Obama have that sort of thing when he was elected? I mean, I personally, I remember quite liking Obama as a president. I don't know if that was, like, a consensus in the US. I mean, I was a lot younger when he was elected. What was that like? I mean, this is a side tangent, but just interested, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I voted for him in 2008. He definitely had, I mean, the whole hope and change thing was its own cult of personality, but that was a little more understandable because we were going through a serious economic recession with a lot of criminal behavior, white collar criminal behavior. And you're right, like Twitter existed, but it wasn't what it is now. Facebook was not what it is now. Instagram, I don't think even existed at this point. So like when Obama started attracting that cult in 2012, when social media really started to be more prevalent, that's when I was turned off by him too, So I don't know if that's just me, but I don't know. It was Obama was a unique, the first Obama term was a unique thing, like him winning over McCain and becoming president, but it was a much more hopeful time. And again, these people are no Obama either. So it's,
also true.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah, I mean, him as a president is a bit hit and miss, but I think him as a person, like, I think he's a very likable guy. I think you could have a beer with him or something and have a good time. I think you could have a laugh with him. I don't know. That's just how I see it. But I mean, that's not what you're voting for. But like, I mean, in terms of
I think you are. You're voting to have a beer with him.
I mean, true. I mean, The Rock should be president, as Twitter has said numerous times.
Yeah.
The Rock or Beyonce, that'd be great. Either.
Yeah, or Oprah.
Oh, yeah. Even better. You're right, actually. That's a good point.
Oh, God. So ridiculous. I did want to talk about one last thing with you, Colin. Totally off topic of this, but back in, it would have been end of last year, Sacred Symbols was supposed to be at PAX.
Yes.
And that all just went fucking sideways. I guess from your perspective, looking back on it now, what happened with that in your eyes, and would you ever consider doing any sort of panel at any sort of event with Colin's Last Stand, Sacred Symbols, one of your games at all? Would that be a thing in the future, or is that now off the table because of what went down, which is so weird? Especially, it's not 2017 anymore, where everyone was quite as, I guess, sensitive. I feel like people are getting maybe less sensitive in some ways, more sensitive. I don't know, but yeah, where are you at with all that?
Yeah, that was obnoxious, and we still don't really know who was responsible for that. I have my own theories on that, but yeah, it was unfortunate. I felt bad for our audience because I know that they wanted to see us, and we don't really go out to these panels very often or these shows, especially me anymore in my post IGN and post Kind of Funny days. So it was really unfortunate, and I'm open to doing things in the future, but I just don't know that it's a priority right now. And obviously the whole global situation now with coronavirus has materially affected anyone's ability to do much of anything in person. So who the fuck knows what's going to happen to these shows. E3 has already been affected in GDC and whatever the case might be. But yeah, it was unfortunate. It was a political hit, and I think a lot of it just comes from like our continued success and our meteoric success in the face of defamation and just this incessant ill will that's put towards us by certain people in the media. And it just happened a few days ago when someone tweeted at me about tweeted about Twinbreaker, and I responded. It was this woman that works at this, I don't even know what the outlet is, but was talking shit about the game. And it's just like, I don't really understand. I don't even know who you are. I've never talked to you. I never did anything to you. And I can sense your jealousy through the fucking computer screen. So, you know, I think a lot of people realize that, well, I think some smart people in the industry realize that the more they berated us and the more that they defamed and attacked me for no reason, the more popular I got and the more money I made. And now that we released a game that's popular, people just don't know when to quit and they just don't know how to handle it. And so it would be fun to do something for Twinbreaker or something for CLS at one of these shows, but I don't think I told anyone this, but I did sign up for PAX, whatever the last PAX was, and they declined us. So I think the deck is stacked against us, and I think that's the case with a lot of game PR too. But the good news is that we don't really need any of these people. In fact, our outsider status just helps. So maintaining that is actually to the benefit of our company and to our bottom line, because it gives us a lot of credibility that a lot of other places can't claim, because they get their games early and they have PR contacts and they have all their buddies on their shows, and you can't really trust what they're saying because you don't know where the connections go, and you don't know if they're holding back or whatever. And we don't have to pull punches because of our connections, because I actually just stopped asking for anything. I don't even care anymore. It's just like, we don't need this early access. I have plenty of money to buy these games when we need them, and we'll talk to our audience when we can, and our audience just continues to appreciate that. So yeah, it sucked. We were looking forward to going, but and I paid out of pocket $5,000 to reimburse people that wanted money back for their tickets. So you know, I was the one who did the right thing by PAX fucking my audience. I'm the one who had to make that better, but I did.
Yeah, that's commendable. What's interesting though, talking about that real quick, is recently I've seen, once Twinbreaker was released and you put out a tweet saying, like, you've had so many tweets, it's impossible to reply to everybody. You got replies from people like Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog and Cory Barlog from Sony Santa Monica, works on God of War, multiple God of War games. It's interesting to see such big names in the community giving you credit, saying, you know, congrats on the release of your game. That people that have also said they've been enjoying playing the game. I think that helps as well with public, because, like, you know, people can give you shit like they have been for fucking years over the dumbest stuff. And it's good to see these names, you know, just saying, like, congratulations on the release of your game, because people that might have given you, people that might have been giving you shit would look at someone like Cory Barlog and be like, oh, well, now I can't give Colin shit because this guy, who's a huge name in the industry, you know,
incredible name, has
been published by Sony. Someone like Neil Druckmann, for example. These people, we can't give Colin shit because these people are supporting him, and I think that's great to see. I like seeing that. Of course, like, I mean, you're gonna have dumb people like that fucking guy with the Simpsons profile picture, whoever the fuck that is. Don't even remember his name, but I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. You know, we'll give you shit for stuff, but I think it's getting a lot better. And when I said this to Tyler the other day when we were doing a podcast, was the reason all of this happened and whatever, and, you know, it turned out for the best and everything, but the reason everybody, you know, started to see you in a bad light for whatever fucking reason was that one tweet. And the more you think about it, like, the longer it's been since that happened, it's the dumbest fucking thing I think I've ever seen on social media. It's the stupidest fucking thing. And I think it's great to see that. I mean, for one, Colin's
probably it was the best. It was probably the best career move.
Obviously,
of all
like,
time.
Everything's turned out for the best. Like I said, like, Colin's Last Stand is now doing, you know, incredible, like, better than you'd ever done in the past and whatever, and all that stuff. And it's great. And I'm so happy for you. But I think it's great to see, like, public opinion will start to shift because of all of these, you know, big names in the industry that people look up to and follow like sheep. And so I think people will start to change, and things will start to change, and hopefully, because I think you deserve it, Colin. Like, you know, you've always done great things. You're great at what you do, and you're a really good person. So I think it's great to see that from these big names too, and hopefully people will follow that and decide to drop all of this unnecessary fucking hatred for what I consider to be a good man.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you. Yeah, it was cool that they played the game. I talked to Neil from time to time about other things, so we remain friends, and I heard from other people behind the scenes too, and it's cool. It's good to put the game out there, and I agree. I mean, looking back on it, it is so absurd, but it just shows the absurdity of cancel culture generally, and not everyone gets out of it the way I did. Not everyone survives it, and certainly not everyone benefits from it the way I did. It ended up being like the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's just because of the way I played it, I think, in terms of refusing to apologize and not backing down. And
it was also the timing as well, the way you handled it, and the landscape of where everything was at the time, and all these worlds collided for you at that time as well. Like,
definitely,
you went on Joe Rogan twice. Like,
oh my God.
That's what all these presidential candidates are going on. That's the biggest show in the world.
Bernie Sanders was on there.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I mean, and we always say, like, oh, we've had Colin on more times than Joe Rogan's had him on. So,
officially, now, as of today.
So we're better, but you know,
better than Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again, guys. I mean, it's much appreciated, and good to talk about games and politics and all that kind of stuff. I'm always happy to do that. So, I appreciate the kind words for sure.
No, anytime. Before you go, if you got time, there was one topic I thought would be interesting to get. I want to talk to James about, and I'd love to get your thoughts on as well. Do you know about what's happened with iDubbbz?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Something to do with his girlfriend being like a e-girl or something. Is that?
Yeah, James is an iDubbbz expert. James, can you give me some background? Because I did watch a video yesterday.
Sorry, I keep coming back, then I keep dropping out. My internet is an absolute mess. Recently, no idea what's going on there.
No, we can hear. Can you hear us now?
Is it stable? I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're all good on my end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. What were we saying anyway?
Give us the iDubbbz rundown.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty basic. So iDubbbz, if anybody doesn't know, big commentator, talks about his opinion. Mostly got big from that Content Cop series where he talks about other YouTube channels that are doing dumb shit or scummy stuff, or whatever it might be, for entertainment purposes. And essentially, he made a video recently in his series iDubbbz Complains, where he complains about things. I haven't actually even watched this video yet, but I've seen everything that basically he's talking about. So his girlfriend, who I believe was a Twitch streamer, makes videos here and there, whatever. They've been together for quite a bit. Has started an OnlyFans, which is essentially like Patreon, but like it's used for porn. And that's basically what she's doing. Is I don't think she's posting like porn, but like I think she's posting like cosplay and like provocative images. But it's all for the same thing. And he made a video about it because she got a lot of shit from people basically saying like, oh, but you've got a boyfriend, what's going on? What's happening here? Because, I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable response. And he made a video on it saying like, oh, I'm perfectly cool with it or whatever. I'm perfectly cool with like random, like millions of people jerking off to my girlfriend, posting these pictures online for money or whatever. And that's basically what happened. And it split the internet in a sense between people that think it's, it's cool because empowerment of women or whatever, and other people that are like, don't like it, and that's the situation we're in at the minute. With that,
I watched this video yesterday. I thought he handled it well. Like, what he said makes total sense, and ultimately, I mean, if he doesn't care, why the fuck should I care about what his girlfriend's doing?
I mean, people are genuinely upset about it.
I don't know. Well, people are also upset about dumb things.
I mean, people are upset about it. I'm obviously not upset about it, but I think it's funny. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just kind of funny because I mean, I think it would be funny in any instance when you look at like if I said to you like, I don't know, if I said to you like, oh, my girlfriend is posting nudes, and I'm just completely fine with people looking at all of that. Would you not think that's funny?
I mean, I wouldn't think it's funny. I'd be worried for you because I know you and her very well. So I might be a bit more concerned about how the relationship dynamics change so drastically that this is happening. But I mean, in general, I don't know. If I didn't know her and I didn't know you that well, then yeah. I mean, if you're cool with it, then I'm cool with it.
Sure. I think it's just funny in general, though.
What do you mean by funny?
I just think it's funny. I don't know whether it's like this thing that's ingrained in me from like how men should be or whatever. I don't really give a shit about all that like fucking social norms or whatever it is. But I just think it's funny because it's like when you see a man and his significant other is doing that, I just find that funny. It's like, oh, okay, fucking all right. I guess if that's
Colin,
what you're into, like, cool.
What's your perspective on this? Because you probably have a bit more wisdom than James and I would have, but with being in a relationship with someone and then having I don't know if James and I said on the other episode that it's based on how you establish a relationship in the first place. Is that a thing to you? Would you feel the same way about that? Like, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that situation personally, but I just wouldn't put myself in that situation, So I agree with the sentiment that if this is something that everyone's down with, then what does it really even matter? I know people that are in similar situations like that. One of the guys that runs the Filthy Casual brand is married to a girl that is incredibly popular in the in that like naked picture realm, I guess, like the OnlyFans realm or whatever. And it seems like they're perfectly comfortable with that, and maybe they get off on that. I don't know. I personally wouldn't find that hot in any way if someone that I was with was doing that, but I've never had to deal with that problem, so it's not something that I've had to confront. But I agree, it's like all about the parameters of the relationship and what individuals want, and if that's like something she wanted to do and he didn't want to, then they both have the right to do that and then not be in that relationship anymore. So it's just weird. People inject themselves into all sorts of drama or manufacture it where the drama doesn't really exist. And it's obnoxious. I find it quite obnoxious just because people try to get all involved in my life and a lot of the personal things that go on in my life too. And it's hard to try to balance that and let people in, but at the same time have some sort of boundary or whatever, So... yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just not something that matters to me at all. I like iDubbbz. I think he's interesting. I like Content Cop. I think it's really funny. But yeah, it's not something that I don't know why this is drama. And if the people involved in it are all on the up and up, then it certainly doesn't matter to me.
I think the only reason it's become such a big talking point is mainly because of the way that people perceive his girlfriend, is that she's just outside of this, like irrelevant. Forget this whole situation that's happened, but her as a person, she seems quite manipulative, quite toxic. Obviously nobody can speak for
they also don't know her.
Nobody has any idea. Yeah, exactly. Nobody has any idea, but people love to think they have some idea of what's going on. People love to be involved because their own lives are so boring. People love to think they can get involved and understand what's going on and understand people, and it just creates this thing, and so many people are like that. Like, I mean, personally, I don't care either way. I'll still watch iDubbbz content. I still think he's hilarious. I think he's a great guy, whatever. I don't give a shit what he does in his relationship. But I also still think I still think you can make jokes about it if you want to. I don't think that, these people that are genuinely upset and are like, oh, I've lost respect for him. Fucking Leafy came back today out of nowhere to make a video.
I still don't know who that is.
Fucking iDubbbz made a content cop on him, absolutely ruined his career. He left for like 4 years off of YouTube, and he made a video today where he just took a clip from iDubbbz's video about his girlfriend, about OnlyFans, where he's like, my girlfriend makes OnlyFans videos and I'm totally cool with it, and I think it's great that people jerk off to her. And it's just like this short audio clip of him going, oh man, you're a fucking cuck, and that's the whole video. And I mean,
Wow.
it's funny.
That
it's
guy's
'cause
life's
it's
going
fucking
really
dumb.
well. That guy's life is going really well. if that's what
Fucking
he's doing.
leafy.
Yeah,
My
right.
god. I love YouTube drama, but like hate it as well. Like I think it's funny to observe from a distance. I'd never get involved with it, but I think it's just this amusing thing that happens, off to the side with these weird communities of commentators and whatnot. I'm very content making video essays on my own and not getting involved in that.
Yeah.
But it's very funny to observe. It's like a fucking zoo or something. It's great.
Yeah.
But that's what's happened.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, I reckon we're all in agreement about what's going on with iDubbbz. Doesn't matter.
Indeed.
Because it doesn't affect us. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, thank you so much once again for joining us and coming on the show. You're one of our favorite guests to have, one of our favorite people to talk to, and we appreciate how generous you are with your time, man. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you guys. I'm happy to be here, and I'm wishing you the best.
Yeah, good luck with to you and your family getting through, this crisis, and I hope the US comes back even stronger. Live in a great country, and I all the best to you guys.
Thank you. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, we certainly will. We certainly will. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon, and hopefully when that happens, this will all be over and we can laugh about it and everything's good and we're overreacting.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. All right, James, you want to read these Patreon lists and wrap this up?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to our Patreon producers, King Richard III, Damian, Josh Devillier, Olberic, DIDDLOTIC, Real Cinema in Hawkins, aka HBarts12, Seth, and Ballsack47 for your continued support. If you enjoyed what you listened to here, if you enjoyed this episode, and you want more from myself and Tyler, go check out patreon.com/as always. In this time where, you're isolated, you're bored, if you have $1 to spare, then head over to patreon.com/as always. Throw us $1. And you can get access to 80 plus episodes of the Clubhouse podcast, which personally we think is the best podcast on the internet, but of course we're biased. But you can be the judge of that by going and checking it out yourself. There's also a public episode on my channel if you want to go and check that out as well, which was uploaded a few weeks back, but you should be able to find it pretty easily. As well as getting early access to the Mmmmmm podcast, which comes out every week that the As Always podcast is on.
We changed the name, James. We changed the
Sorry,
name.
every single time I fucking do this and I get it wrong. Give me a year and we'll be fine. Every week that the As Always podcast is on YouTube, it comes out a week early, so that week it comes out on Patreon. So you can get access to that, the Mmmmmm podcast, as well as early access to everything me and Tyler do, big projects. You can access 24 hours early. So there's plenty of stuff going on over there. So go and check it out. You can also help support us. It means the world. Thank you to everybody that's pledging $5 or more. We have got King Richard III, Damian, Josh Devillier, Olberic, DIDDLOTIC, Real Cinema in Hawkins, aka HBarts12, Seth, Ballsack47, Casey Wood, Pink Flame 313, Dummer Adam Sundling, Alfie Rowsell, Jamie Brown, Jesper Olsen, Lumistrad, Moriarty has coronavirus, KEMOSABE Gamer, CREAMPIES, Olly Hodges, The Creed, Josh J. Anderson, Brendan LBQ Overlord, RAVJAI, Summer Dylan, Diogo, Zixon, Modorox Returns, Gwen Hughes, 2018, 1998, 20, Conjuros, Bully in the Alley, Max H, Gene is doing bits in the coal mines, Owen Brayne, Zeek Collins has maximum XP and let's go, Son of a Bitch, Ogeaidogo, Heresy Bat Assassin, Noah Watts, Furious Coco, Sab2557, Nick Miller, the ACMJS, Radok, Casper Coral, Smexy Dork, Lewis, Cassassin, Kyle, Estraws, ML Cabok, Joshua Moro, Walshy, Ginkgo Swag, Malhar is a chunky boy, Master Bass, Ashton, hashtag Team Mace Windu, Conversations, loves Toby's Cream Pies, Josh, Joe, the Sexy Boy Smith, Joe, aka Fan Scarab, Evan Brown, Gives Good Top, Luca, Alfie Robert, Brian Ford, That's How It Be Sometimes, Fishy, Ben Fryer, Team Anna Travis, Billy, the Team Dynamite Captain Robertson, and Baby Boy. Thank you so much for your continued support. Bloody hell, I had a stroke there reading that. But that is how it be sometimes. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Colin, again for joining us. It's been a blast. And we will see you all next time, in 2 weeks' time, for the next episode of As Always Podcast. See you in a week's time over on Patreon for Clubhouse. And that's it from us. See you later, boys. Catch you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.